Yeah, I don't know. Any other questions? Yes.
Who is it specifically, or what organization that has the power to prosecute these people and is refraining from doing so?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is which organizations, which government entities have the power to prosecute these banks and have refrained from doing so? There's a whole range of regulators and government authorities that have had the power to do this. The SEC doesn't have prosecutorial authority, but they do have the authority to refer these companies for prosecution to the Justice Department. The FBI, there are banking regulators like the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency. There used to be the Office of Thrift Supervision, which is another regulator. The state attorneys general, they are probably the most likely to prosecute these banks, and a lot of them actually have brought actions against Bank of America, but a lot of those prosecutions went away because of the foreclosure settlement. They were rolled into the settlement. States like Massachusetts and Nevada and Arizona, they had to forego some of their the investigations of this company. But they're your best bet. It's state attorneys general. They're the ones who are most likely to respond to public pressure.
Is there any states where they are refusing to make these kinds of settlements, where they're actually hardlining and actually prosecuting people, not just fining them? That you know of?
Well, there are none of the major players from a company like this have been prosecuted and put in jail, if you want to put it that way. Typically, the biggest thing that ever happens to a company like this is that they have to pay a fine. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Bank of America got caught bid rigging. Does everyone know what bid rigging is? So when a state wants to borrow money, they're supposed to put it out to auction. They're supposed to allow the financial companies who are going to do that bond issue, they're supposed to submit a bid to see who's going to pay the most to the state for that business. Bank of America was involved in rigging these bids so that they would win. All these banks had arrangements with each other that, I'll sit this one out, I'll submit a low bid, you can win this one, we got to win this one. They got caught doing this in dozens of instances around the country, and they only had to pay a $137 million fine. That's a good question, because in the old days when mobsters did the same thing for cement contracts and highway contracts, we put those guys in jail and we used RICO, the Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations Act, to put those people in jail. This is exactly the same crime. The only difference is it's white guys in suits and not Italians, and they didn't go to jail for it. They just had to pay a fine that came out of the shareholders' pockets. It wasn't even their own money. That. To give you an example, in the overdraft case, when the bank was caught overcharging people for overdraft that they didn't really make. They made about $4.5 billion on the overdrafts, but they settled for $410 million in that case. So it's a cost of doing business for these guys. Even when they get caught, they tend to pay a tenth, a 20th of how much they actually owe. In the foreclosure settlement, the entire industry is paying $26 billion. The actual liability just for robo-signing is probably $1 trillion, $900 billion. So these guys know that not only does crime for them is it profitable, it's actually cheap. That if you're going to pay in the foreclosure instance, for instance, they're only paying $2,000 per homeowner, whereas the actual liability is probably 20 or 30 times that. And so, again, the problem is even when we catch them, there's really no consequence. Anyway, one last question. Yeah.
Can you explain how the global derivatives market is, many multiples the times the size of the global GDP?
Sure.
And also what derivatives fraud has to do with the attack on public sector unions and pensions.
Okay, I'll start with the first one. The global derivatives market. Why is it so much bigger than global GDP? Well, again, getting back to the old days of mortgage lending, when you had a mortgage, it was just you and your bank, right? So if you didn't pay your mortgage, there was no big deal because the bank would just step in and take your house. The biggest loss you could get, the biggest loss involved was the bank would end up with your property and you would be out whatever money you paid for the mortgage. But now, what ends up happening is you create a mortgage, and then you have a bank that goes out and it creates a bet on that mortgage, and then it creates a bet on a bet on that mortgage, and then a bet and a bet and a bet on that mortgage. So now, if you don't pay that mortgage, not only are you out that is the bank out that money, but all these people who bet on your mortgage, basically they're betting on you to make your payments on time. If you default, it creates this gigantic house of mirrors of losses all over the planet. So that's what happened in 2008. Instead of all these home defaults, these home mortgage defaults, instead of just a few losses here and there, it created losses all over the planet because each default resulted in 20, 30 times the amount of losses around the planet. You're essentially creating new losses out of thin air, and that's really what the problem is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mic check. Real quick. We're gonna go over there. There's gonna be a special performance. From the Plus Brigade.
Very cool. Let's see it. This is Waylon Lang.
I covered the event.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your name?
Lynette.
Lynette, let me give you my card. Can you